I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Can I have quiet, please? Quiet, please.
Bye.
Hey, hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order of the Columbia Planning and Zoning Commission. There are, let's see, is Walt on Zoom?
No.
So we have Justin and Marnie on Zoom. So we have, I'm gonna, let's see. Fred, you're seated again. Any additions or changes to the agenda, John? The agenda.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I lost my mute there. Yes, no changes to the
No
agenda.
changes to the agenda. So the minutes of the meeting of April 28th, 2025, any corrections, modifications? I'll make a motion, we accept them as presented. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, is that unanimous? Yeah, Marty, raise your hand. So with regard to the public hearing items 5.1 and 5.2 that were numbered differently at our last iteration of the public hearing, I just want to know whether, I want to get some perspective from LMAC, whether or not they have any more data to present to us or what their progress is in getting the funding for continuing study. But I'd rather defer any public comment so that we can concentrate it to once we have that, unless somebody feels there's something pressing. I mean, if you want to say something, we're open to that. But there's a lot been said about this already, about these two remaining zoning amendments that are still on the table. So from LMAC.
Either one.
Mary, why don't you do? I'll refer.
Okay.
Hi, Mary, Local 34. LMAC has received a proposal from our lake consultant TRC relative for a nutrient load sensitivity analysis of the Columbia Lake watershed. This proposal has been presented to our town administrator, who will be presenting it with LMAC tomorrow evening at the Board of Select. Is it no, May 20th? I'm sorry, Tuesday, May 20th at the Board of Selectmen meeting for their review and hopefully.
So I'm gonna suggest, yes, sir.
Sir, quick question, is that gonna be able to determine where the loading is coming from?
I'm not sure it'll deter, I can't answer that question. This is a computer modeling sensitivity analysis. I would suspect it may not pinpoint exactly where, but it's going to give an assessment. It was better explained, and I think, Fred, you.
Sure, I actually had a follow-up question for that.
Sure.
Were we able to put the map the town planner sent to us on the screen?
John?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Are you
happy to.
Thank you.
So may I explain what this is?
Yeah, just explain the details to us on that, please.
So, okay, so the proposed regulation, the proposed agricultural, or I'm sorry, livestock regulation, does two things. First, it removes the arbitrary number of livestock, but the second thing, it increases the required separation distance between livestock housing, which is to say a stable or a coop or a barn, at a minimum of 100 feet from the nearest residential property. And so what we did is we took the LA overlay, so just the immediate lake vicinity subzone, and we asked our GIS person to basically draw a 100-foot buffer around residential structures. And so the LA is in pink, so that's the areas, the properties in closest proximity. Yes.
John, just one thing. So you said property, I think you meant to say structures at the start of this.
A residential,
100 foot.
but around residential structures. Thank you.
Structures, not residential properties.
Right.
So it's
So-
not property bound.
So the purple blobs are basically that 100-foot buffer area wherein you would not be able to place livestock housing. And so you can see, virtually the entire lakefront itself is basically off limits for livestock. You would not be able to house or keep livestock in any of those purple areas. So you would have to set those areas back. So the immediate, the way that the regulation is written would basically prevent livestock from lakefront lots, in essence, with the exception of a very few. I think over here on the west portion of the lake, there's a couple of perhaps empty parcels. And then obviously in the larger acreage areas away from the lake, you would be able to place agricultural livestock housing structures. But the nature of the regulation would prevent, basically anything within 100 feet or so, any property within 100 feet or so of the lake, from livestock housing.
I'm gonna ask us not to get into a lot of detail about this tonight, because I'd really rather reserve this for testimony and questions until after we have the study, if possible.
Well, I wanted him to highlight that in terms of the study, because when we asked the contractor at the last meeting how the study would be performed, he said he would be flipping a certain percentage of lakefront properties to supporting agriculture as part of the study and running a computerized model off of that. So if he does that model, it's gonna be for properties that can't support agriculture to begin with.
I don't think he's doing just lakefront properties. I think he's doing areas A, B, and C, the watershed.
Okay, so
It's much larger than what.
But
that
I would want to make sure that he was aware of that provision, and we could give him a copy of this map to make sure that he doesn't convert, 20% of the immediate lakefront properties to agriculture. And the other thing I would just note is looking at the proposal. If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I'm going to change my share screen. I have a copy of the proposal. I believe this is the proposal that was sent to the lake, and the folks from LMAC can tell me if this is correct. Does this look like the proposal that was submitted?
Dated May
So,
6th.
so the what's being proposed is changing land use categories, and the categories are here: residential, agricultural, transportation, commercial, industrial, etc. Agriculture is basically considered a single thing, which in my opinion lacks both geographic and categorization nuance. Because pasture is not the same thing as livestock, is not the same thing as crops, and certainly is not the same thing, based on acreage, based on distance. So I would look for a little bit of nuance, particularly relative to our separation distance map. But it's with all due respect to the consultant, it's an extremely crude category.
So I would ask LMAC to make sure that the lake consultant's aware of this additional data.
In moving forward, may I suggest that I meet with John on Thursday? We look at the overlay he's just given us. We incorporate what is being asked for the proposal, and we'll get that to PRC ASAP
Okay.
if there needs to be.
Mary, one of the things you may want to consider is what they've done with this map is extend it to the zones A, B, and C,
Correct.
because that's what the proposal is.
The proposal is
Right,
the entire.
not just the lakefront.
Here, we have somebody else
Thank you.
on.
I would
Could you just say your name for the record?
Antoinette, 103 Lake Road. I would like to ask planning and zoning how they propose to proceed if the town chooses not to fund.
I think we'll decide that at our next version of the public hearing. So I would, instead of hypotheticals, let's just deal with what we have in front of us at each meeting. So let's assume for a moment we're gonna get funding, and if we don't, then we'll decide at that point in time. I asked the commission members to contemplate where they might go with it, but it's a good question.
Okay. Should I present the Agriculture Commission letter to you now?
You're welcome to, but I'd like to take in all the testimony when we're really back in the weeds considering all this. I think it'll be more effective to have that input, because we're not gonna rush to any decision And I think it would be very helpful to have that data presented freshly instead of being a letter that was submitted weeks before, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it might end up being, if that's in fact the case. You'll have ample time to submit it.
Judy,
I believe somebody
Oh,
behind
sorry.
me. Yes,
James Locke, 24 Doubleday Road.
hi.
Want to say this was brought up at a previous meeting, and I think it was something Mr. Gianelli was getting at, that the setting in this test essentially, it's just a simulation, for agriculture is a fixed number. So this test seems very arbitrary and subjective.
When you say test, I don't know what you're referring to.
It's a study, it's a simulation, it's not like a real scenario, it's a simulation of what could happen with a scenario, and the agriculture block is a setting, like not a, well, this type of agriculture, like, okay, they're gonna have 10 chickens, they're gonna have 1 chicken, they're gonna have a donkey, they're gonna have a cow. It's-
You just, let me
This
clarify, I
property
want to
is set in
clarify something.
agriculture.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, the GIS overlay map was created with the empirical data that we have about where structures are located and what this proposed regulation setback would effectively prohibit, so.
It's not, I'm not talking about the map, I'm talking about when he runs the simulation, when he sets the property as agriculture, it's a fixed agriculture. It doesn't delineate between this person has corn, this person has cows, this person has sheep, this person has whatever. It's a like set number. It's not very, it doesn't sound like it's very accurate. Obviously, I'm no expert on this, I don't work for this guy, but it doesn't sound like it's very accurate. It sounds like
If it's
the
gonna,
number that comes out of it, what is it gonna mean to us?
at this point, we don't have much control over that, that's a product of LMAC and the Board of Selectmen. I would suggest that input goes to them and have them try and incorporate whatever your concerns are for the study at that point in time, because once it comes to us, it's gonna be something that's done that I don't think we'll have the ability to bounce it back and forth, quite frankly, so I would
Like, if there's a
intervene
study,
now.
You won't be able to analyze it.
We're kind of
Decide
on,
what you wanna do.
we're on the receiving end of the data. And that's always the way it's been. The only reason it's before planning and zoning is we're a legislative body. We can, implement regulations to, put into practice the recommendations. But the real work is done by LMAC and the Board of Selectmen. That's really it. We're the people that we listen to them. What should we do? I mean, that's how we've operated in the past. I'm assuming we'll likely do that going forward. Please, anyone jump in if it's, I have to give them credit for our nutrient allocation regulations. Not planning and zoning, we didn't think of it. They just came to us and said, we need you to implement these. And we followed their recommendations almost to the letter.
I understand what you're saying, and I think this was brought up a few weeks ago with the consultant, and I know I'm a member of LMAC as well, and I know when we were talking to the consultant, we expressed that concern that the agricultural component is just a one-line agricultural number with a factor.
Right.
I'm not sure if he can tweak that or somehow break it down, so it's a little bit more specific. I really understand what you're saying.
You're
I
saying,
think we can get back to him, the consultant, and LMAC can get back to the consultant and ask him if he can change numbers. Just like, I don't know if you're familiar with the nutrient allocation plan, Ken, but that has various factors for things like grass, asphalt, roofing, dirt, whatever. There's certain factors and you can tweak those factors to some extent. So I'm wondering if this consultant can also do that so that it is more specific than what you're saying. He's not going to be able to say, oh, this has 1 chicken.
Well, just
That's a bit microscopic.
Right,
He
right.
may be able to differentiate between live and corn,
so,
livestock, and then something was grown.
so just to point out, we did ask him at the last meeting, he says that they just flip it to a property supporting agriculture. And it goes by USDA average for
Right.
any property that supports
Right.
agriculture.
Right.
That there is no fine tuning of the output, just generally a property that supports ag.
so you're concerned that's too general.
Correct.
Okay, so let's get it on record. We've expressed that. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
Yeah,
And so that's, I think, what you, at this point, we're on record as saying the perspective from the public at this point is that's too general for agriculture, that it needs to be divided into at least 2, if not more categories.
Well, I don't think we need to number them, but it'd be nice if we could be more specific.
There needs to be a way to look at it. If we're gonna view this data as being relevant to us, it
Okay.
needs to reflect what would actually be on the lake, because they're not gonna have industrial
It's not-
farming right on the lake.
Excuse me, it's
West.
not on the lake, it's within the watershed.
Yes, that's it, that's what I mean.
Watershed has
watershed
three
area,
districts,
I
it's not just
understand.
around the lake.
I understand the
Okay,
watershed.
and you
area.
said around the lake,
General vicinity,
the
Okay,
area that impacts the lake, yes.
yes.
let's just refer to the watershed. Judy?
Judy Ortiz, 15 Columbia Landing, I guess. How is, I'm just trying to understand what this test would do. How is it different than other tests we've done? And I guess I'd like to make sure that it's, you know, that the farm community has input into this and not just from the lake, but the farm community has input is, you know, how valuable it is. And I think that's what you were referencing too. But how is it different than what we've done before? Because we've done a lot of tests on the lake.
I don't think this is a test at all. This is an
It's
analysis.
gathering data, okay, in that.
Yeah, the data that, from my understanding, the data that's been done on the lake has been primarily with the water quality of the lake. And things that affect the water quality of the lake,
Mhm.
primarily specifically around the lake. We've not done studies that have included the whole watershed. So this study is going to include the whole watershed.
Okay, so, and what are you hoping to find?
I'm not sure. I think
The impact of phosphorus on the from the watershed, the various areas of the watershed.
So it wouldn't say where it's, I mean, obviously not where it's coming from, it just is some impact.
In generalities, it may tell you where it's coming from. In a general area, it's not gonna say a specific address or specific yard necessarily. But I'm not sure exactly. I don't think it's gonna be that specific.
Yeah,
Pinpoint.
so it's still like a general thing where it's coming from.
It may say, okay, there's a farm on X road, and that farm is contributing X amount of phosphorus to the overall watershed. Farm could be 10 acres, it could be 20 acres, I don't know.
Yeah, the gentleman behind you.
Charles Edinburgh, Pine Street, just trying to make sure I understand correctly, the concern with rising levels of phosphorus potentially in the Columbia Lake watershed area would be that it could generate algae blooms that would make the lake toxic and unswimmable,
Touche.
not safely swimmable.
Good one. There are two or three, you hit one of the primary ones. We are at a phosphorus load in our lake, and this is measured by our consultants, and it has been measured since the 1980s. Where the number of kilograms of phosphorus is approaching a tipping point where we're going to see clearly, and we've seen over the last 10 years already, larger amounts of cyanobacteria algae. We're already seeing larger plant growth in the lake with too much of a good thing, phosphorus, because we realize phosphorus is a good thing. And third, oxygen depletion, which could harm our plant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm gonna try and gently rush us through this, just because I'd really rather have most of what we just talked about presented when we really blossom back into the full public hearing mode after the study. I'm not gonna try and limit anything, but I'm just asking, just keep that in mind. Yes, sir?
Jason Rico, 102 Lake Road. I just have one small nuance for mostly LMAC. In the TRC proposal, Carl says that he's going to look at changing from residential to mixed use residential ag, which we don't have any specific residential versus it's all. I just want him to. It's really for him to change the proposal. Mary, I don't want him to misunderstand what's going on here. It's not a zoning change, it's a regulation.
Can I just summarize what I think I hear the concerns are and jump in if I'm misstating this? The farming community is afraid that one bin agriculture isn't sufficient. You're looking for things to be broken down more accurately as to what a potential agricultural channel would be, whether it's field crops, whether it's intensive farm animals, highly controlled farm animals, and you're afraid that, not afraid, I don't want to use that word, but you're concerned that the study won't be accurate enough in And is that,
Yes, I
Fair
am concerned
summarization.
about that, but that's not specifically what I'm talking about right now. This is, Carl, do you, in his proposal, he writes, we don't have any strictly residential areas in Columbia. They're residential ag. They're mixed use by nature unless they're deemed commercial or, so I don't want him, in his proposal to, this is really for LMAC. I'm sorry to bring this up now. I didn't get a chance to read the proposal before this meeting, and I just wanted to go on record so that Carl knows it. That he's aware that he's not trying to flip a zoning thing. He's trying, or not flip a zoning thing. He's not trying to change the zoning issue. He's trying to, we're working on regulation
I
here.
don't think he's changing the zoning, I think
No.
he's defining residential as where there's a house as opposed to a farm. Okay, he's not talking about AR zones, he's not talking about CM zones, he's not talking about planning zones, he's talking about areas of the study.
Okay.
I think that's where, so it
You
has
see
nothing to
where I
do
was
with
going
zoning.
with that,
It has
right?
nothing to do with the zoning
Okay.
nomenclature, I think it has to do with the use.
you don't mix zoning designation with property usage,
I mean,
two separate
this
things.
is, oh, okay. Yeah,
Just
But
because,
we'll
because everything's in R,
yes.
because everything's an RA zone with different levels within the watershed. Zones A, B, and C. That's a zoning designation. I think that if I'm not incorrect, the consultant is gonna look at the usage of the property,
Correct.
what it's actually used as, and I think. To go a step beyond that, some of the good suggestions are, maybe it should be broken down, not just into one general category for agriculture, but a few subcategories to get a more accurate read.
We'll build on that.
Okay.
We've already made adjustments that Carl heard 2 weeks ago relative to add dog stuff and, lawn clippings, et cetera. So I will speak with him hopefully by
And I
tomorrow.
suggest that the concerns that are voiced here, they're really good, is get those directly to LMAC in the form of a letter or an email. And just so that it goes on record there and it can flow out to the consultant, because the more info the consultant has from us, the better the result can
I
possibly.
think there was also one more thing that was discussed at LMAC. And that's that the consultant would be available for presentation to this body. I don't know if he'll be here in person, but certainly he can be via Zoom. So that if there are technical questions or misunderstanding, whatever clarifications that have to be made, he will be available for that.
He's going to present.
Yes. And he'll present the study.
Anything else
Again, I don't
you'd like to bring up?
I don't need to speak for LMAC. I am on LMAC, that's why I'm telling you these things.
Just in this item.
Justin,
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, Rick. I know you want to move things along, but I understand the concerns of everybody and I agree with those concerns. I think when we revisited John's map there that he did with 100-foot setbacks, that's something that I did not articulate very well in the last couple of meetings. So when I read the scope of work, I want to reiterate, we need to take those things into consideration because we're effectively eliminating a lot of lots everywhere in the RA zone if they're small enough. From counting towards agricultural use. So we need to be careful, and I appreciate John stepping up and working through this process with LMAC. The other thing is there is, I know I've mentioned this a few times, there is over 50 years worth of reports that exist already. Some get very specific on livestock nutrient load specifically and make estimates on that. And I don't want that to be lost in the ether. We have a lot of good information going back many, many years. So that should be part of the discussion as LMAC moves forward. And I appreciate as well the Ag Commission stepping up as being part of this too. So thank you.
May 27th.
Partnership.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
One more, just what is our timeline for how we're gonna move forward with this after this analysis is complete? This seems like it's sufficiently important topic to the point where we want the town to be able to see some kind of presentation, maybe in a larger venue like the cafeteria at the school, present both sides and then adjourn to referendum, right?
No, What's proposed here is a zoning regulation change, and the planning and zoning commission is, that's what our function is. So that's the function of the public hearings that we have here, is to take into account public sentiment and subject, public testimony. So it's not a townwide referendum, that's not the mechanism for this.
Can we at least have a town meeting and vote in person?
That's not the legal structure for how this type of thing is handled. Yeah, that's just not, that's not in accordance with the charter.
Would we be able to do something like that, if you would have the context of how the town feels about it, and at least those in attendance.
That's what our public hearing is for here. Yeah, you know,
Got 4,000 people in this town, and I don't think we have all of them here.
you know, we'll look at things as we get closer to making a decision. We're not gonna rush any decision, which is why I think very prudently decided to just keep this open. We're gonna keep rolling this. We don't have a timeline in mind, other than we hope that the report will be to us through LMAC within 60 days of the time we open the public hearing.
Just FYI, there have been other instances where there have been regulation changes proposed. And the general public obviously was very interested in those, and when the numbers get large enough, they can hold it in the open hall. But it's the same process that's happening right now. People get up and they can speak their piece, one way or yay or nay or whatever, but the final decision is made by this board.
Okay, yes, sir.
Could you highlight,
Could you, for the record?
oh, I'm sorry, Paul Cordonway at 101. Could you highlight, without being specific about the timeline, the steps to proceed to get to the point of a decision? On the two.
I think I just covered that. We're gonna keep deferring this till we have in hand an LMAC, a report that comes through LMAC.
That's step one.
If it doesn't seem like it's forthcoming, we'll decide what to do at that point. If it takes longer, then the commission will decide how they want to proceed on a meeting by meeting or a public hearing session by public hearing session basis. We anticipated from the time of the opening of the public hearing that it was going to be approximately 60 days based on what the consultant said and in terms of the consultant's testimony. That's all I have for right now.
Again, all that is contingent upon the Board of Selectmen approving
Next Tuesday.
the money for study.
Okay.
So don't tell them I said this, but put some pressure on them.
I'll call you now. No duty, but yes.
Thank you. You know, this is very subjective, but the lake is such a vital resource to this town. I think it's at the front of nearly everybody's concern, so I'm not worried about it, but.
And Rick, just to clarify, it's $8,000 for that study?
That's what was quoted,
It's the proposal.
yeah, in the proposal, as long as it doesn't expand based on the proposal expanding.
Well, that's.
We are looking at ways to try to utilize budget we already have this year that we may not have spent to get that number down for next year's budget.
Okay.
We're trying to work the system best we can.
Thank you.
They make a motion that we continue the public hearing for these two items
To May 27th.
on May 27th. Yeah.
Yes, I'll second that. Any discussion? I'm all those in favor? Okay,
Opposed?
opposed? That's unanimous.
No.
You're opposed to continuing it?
Mhm.
Okay, so Fred's on record as opposing the continuation.
Oh, Justin.
Justin's opposed to continuing.
He's vote? Is yes.
I am opposed, correct.
Okay. Okay, next up. Anything anyone wants to bring up, items of citizens, anything to bring up that isn't already on the agenda? Okay, under unfinished business. Item 7.1 and 7.2. There's no action to take because the public hearing is still open. Under item 7.3, the plan of conservation and development. might be most effective, John, for you to give an update based on what we covered at our last meeting, our last committee meeting.
Sure. So, thanks. So I'm going to share, so we had determined at a previous meeting that we would like the plan to largely follow the structure of the existing plan of conservation and development and be updated and reviewed by a committee of the whole. So what we would propose is to set up a schedule of discussions and meetings essentially at one of the two planning and zoning commission meetings in the course of any given month. And it's, I believe, Mary Kay, I think the schedule is not in the, actually, I don't know if I even gave it to you in the packet, but I will put up on the screen a proposed schedule of discussion. And so we basically, there are something like 11 or 12 different topic areas in the current plan that look at, community resources and economic development, agriculture, transportation, and that sort of thing. I have combined a number of them into sort of combined categories and proposed the schedule that is hopefully up on the screen as the broad strokes, and let me zoom in a little bit, the broad strokes outline of producing, reviewing, and completing the plan of conservation and development. So I basically started here, and hopefully people can see this on screen, with the expiration point, which the current plan expires in June of 2026, so a little over a year from now. So working backwards, we basically have to have the public hearing and adoption in June of next year. The draft has to be done and submitted to OPM, the COG, and the town clerk for comments by 2 months earlier than that. So that would be April 2026. And then working backwards, I have a number of basically deliverables in which we basically update chapters essentially 1 month at a time. And at that, the meeting in which we review that chapter, we would begin discussion on the next one. So if you look at the bottom of this, line 16, starting today, this would be the proposed outline schedule. Ideally, we can approve this, and I'll forward this around so people can review this. And perhaps at our next meeting, we can adopt the outline and schedule. June, we'd start talking about the demographics and introduction, sort of some of the vision of the plan, the broad goals. And then each month we would start talking about natural resources and open space. Then in August, we talk about community, cultural, and recreational resources. Then following that, housing in September, economic development in October, agriculture in November, transportation, utilities, and community facilities in December. And then we would start in the new year, finishing it up, talking about implementation, and then drafting the document. So it would basically be starting in July, you'd start to see chapters being produced, and we'd start talking about those as we then talk about broad goals in each of the areas. So that's very quick, but we'll forward this around and make sure that people are comfortable with it, and then ideally adopt this schedule or something close to it in at our next meeting.
One of the goals in the back of my mind, and I don't know if I expressed this to you, John, at the subcommittee meeting, was I wanted to keep the approximate timeline in front of us all the time, so that if we start to fall behind, we do what we have to catch up, so that a public hearing process where we get a lot of input from the public isn't rushed, and we give that whatever time that we need to have. And I anticipate that likely 1 or 2 meetings in August may get canceled, because if there's no one around and there's nothing else on the agenda, those meetings tend to go away. So thank you for that. Any questions from the commission? Okay, so you'll get a copy of that out to all of us, and we'll kind of that'll be our working guide. And if you have some suggestions, some way to tweak the timeline, that would be great.
And I would also note that the survey, the community survey, is live, and I believe it went out in Columbia Views, because I did get a little bit of a burst of submissions over the last couple of days. So hopefully people are reading it and submitting. And then we'll also send it out in the municipal sort of text blast and Facebook and that sort of thing. So we'll continue to publicize the survey.
And, you know, and just to reinforce, all the different stakeholders in town, every commission that, every land use and other commissions, every entity, every organization that can possibly be touched by the plan of conservation and development, they'll be kept apprised officially of what our progress is and
who's in charge of that? John?
Mary Kay and John.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we'll in each topic, well, the one thing that we will do is, again, we're going to be having these topical conversations each month. So when we are talking about conservation and open space, the month before we talk about that, we will make sure to invite LMAC and then the Conservation Commission and the land trust areas and things like that. So we'll make sure that we're inviting stakeholders to those specific discussions.
Okay. Anything else? Next up is item 8.1, site plan application. Greg Lott, I see that you're here representing the applicant.
Yes.
So this is the site plan application of Norm Thibodeau Jr. of PE of Killingly Engineering Associates for a proposed 60 by 120 addition for a commercial sign business at 233 Route 6, map 6, lot 28A, zone CM1, lot area 4.4 acres.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. For the record, Greg Glaude from Killingly Engineering Associates. So I am representing Quality Sign Crafters in 233 Route 6 LLC for this application. This is the former United Health and Social Service building that's across from Columbia Ford, just to give you a little bit of insight as to where we're operating from. We did provide a statement of use, which details, the size of the building being 120 by 60. It's going to be to the rear of the building. It describes their present location. They currently operate out of Windham, Connecticut. They've outgrown their facility. So they're looking, they've purchased this building and they're looking to put an addition on it and use it. I think it's been vacant for a few years now where it hasn't been operating. They are located on 4.4 acres on Route 6, and to the rear of them is the Hop River. We currently have applications in front of the Inland Wetlands Commission. As a matter of fact, there was a site walk earlier today. And we are also in front of Eastern Highlands. This has an on-site septic system. So, we do have to get it reviewed, although we're going to be a lot less number of people in this building. So we feel that the septic system is sufficient, but it is being reviewed by Eastern Highlands. If you'd like, I can share my screen and go over the plans if that's what you guys would like to see, so I can give a little bit more detail.
That would be great.
All right, I'm going to open up the site plan set. All right. So the second set sheet is the existing conditions plan. So this is the A2 survey, shows our building up front, the existing building that we have. There's a shared driveway with an easement associated to it that allows us to go over the neighboring property and come into this property. It's mostly pavement in the back. There is a concrete pad further back on the property. This dotted line back here is the 100-year flood limit. And then there's also the wetland flags that were delineated. And then there's the Hop River, which kind of curves around, and our site goes a little bit further off the screen. We do have a little bit of catch basins that run from the front area to another catch basin here, through a pipe system to a catch basin towards the rear part of the parking. And then that exits to a flared end section just outside of the 100-year flood. So that's our existing conditions plan. We do only have the one entrance. There is another, what almost looks like an entrance here to the east of the property. I believe that that was cut off maybe 20 years ago. It used to be there, but I believe Route 6, the state of Connecticut went through and did some closing down of roads and driveways back in the day. And I believe this was one of them because you can see where it was saw cut in the field. So that's the existing conditions. The next sheet is just what we're showing to be removed. We'll be saw cutting the pavement, removing most of the pavement in back, saw cutting over here by that parking area, and removing the islands and trees that go along with it. Obviously, we'll be putting silt fence up along the area where we're going to clear. This is mostly all invasives all through here right now. It's all Russian olive. Back in the day before this was the office space that it is for United Services, this was like I believe a contractor site combined with the site just to the west of it. Let's see if we get to the next sheet. The next sheet is the site plan. So this shows the proposed building that we're putting in, 60 feet wide, coming out the 120 feet. We will be repaving and having a circular drive that goes around it. This area here is the existing paving. That's going to be our parking. There's no striping out there today. It's all faded, but we will restripe it. We're also going to add a handicap space in that area with a handicap sign. We will connect the new walk up to the new proposed building. We'll also be providing 5 spaces off to the west side. And then there'll be 2 loading spaces on the east side of the building. That would allow a truck to come in, back into these loading spaces, and then leave out the way they came. We're showing a little bit of gravel surface area too that will remain between that existing concrete pad and our proposed pavement. That's really just for maneuvering of larger trucks so that they're not going to go over the paved areas, or if they go over the paved areas, they're not really driving on grass or anything like that. The other big item that we're dealing with is storm drainage. So this pipe is deep enough to leave it under the building, and we are going to do that. We are going to tie in our roof leaders to this back catch basin, but we are going to create a water quality basin in this back corner. By the way, there is an existing chain link fence that's out there. So we'll be inside that chain link fence in this area, make a depression that will handle the first 2 inches of rainfall. We're going to actually take this catch basin top and raise it so that it acts as an overflow. We're going to try to promote infiltration of that rainfall. Again, we're reducing, we are adding pavement, but we're going to be reducing the larger area that goes in there by, there will be some grass areas and such, but it's going to go into this, and then ultimately it will flow out through that RCP that's existing. And there's also another spillway there for larger potential storms. But that way there's going to be some treatment. This is all being reviewed with the Wetlands Commission, but that way there's some treatment to the stormwater where presently there is none. So that's one of the items. As far as lighting, we are going to provide some building mounted lights. We have 2 on the west side, 2 on the east side over the loading zones, and 1 off the back site. Those are all specified to be dark sky compliant lights. So there'll be downward throwing lights with shields on top of them to reduce any glow in the sky. Then there's 1 more light, which doesn't show on this site plan, but it shows on the lighting plan. There is 1 more pole light that will be in this island here because we're losing actually a couple of pole lights out there with this. And so we want to provide some lighting for people in this parking lot to be able to get in. Again, it would be a downward type light. I'm going to go to the next sheet. And the next sheet is that lighting plan and showing those lights, and I believe there's some details to it. The rest is the detail sheet themselves. I'm trying to think if there's anything else of high importance. We will be providing a dumpster pad screened in this back corner that will be accessible by the paved driveways that are here. The only thing I didn't get into is landscaping. Presently, the front of the building is got a lot of moderate landscaping going. There's no change to that. I don't show it all, but it is nicely landscaped. I do have a photo I can show you. So we're not really proposing to change anything around that part of the building that you'll see. And this not being open to the public, it really is just, they make larger signs, building mounted signs, pylon type signs all of their sales are ordered through phone calls or through the web. Raw product material comes into the site, the signs are constructed here, and then those signs are shipped out and installed at their locations. So there really is no, we're not planning for any landscaping back here other than the grassed islands that will be provided in there. And I think I can show you, just if you wanted to see a photo real quickly of what it looked like. Let me go one more over. I believe I had a front photo here. So that's what the front looks like from the road. So you can see there is plenty of landscaping there. There's an existing sign which will be utilized. But I did want to show that to the commission that we're doing that. The other item that we didn't submit, which I know we're required to submit, is I do have the architectural plans, which I'll make sure I get you guys a copy of this electronically. But these are the side views of the building, and then this would be the rear view of the building. The one thing I will note is this is an early iteration of the map. They're being done by Provost and Rivero. We do not have a loading door in the back. They've been moved to the sides. They just haven't updated. They were doing bidding processing plans, but they will work on them. But ultimately, it'll be a metal frame building, concrete bottom. And again, most of this won't be seen from the road. Maybe as you're driving by at a very skewed slant, you may see that. And that's about all I have on it. I'll turn it back over to you. Again, I do expect us to go to next month's meeting due to we're waiting for wetlands approvals and we're waiting for approvals from Eastern Highlands. But I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, for any questions or comments or discussion.
Commission questions,
No.
comments, appreciate. You're very straightforward. John, any questions?
No, I do not. I was just going to also mention that, yeah, Wetlands had a site walk this afternoon, so they're not ready to decide. So this will just need to be continued.
Okay, so we're going to continue this to our next meeting, not a month from now, but 2 weeks from now. If you're ready at that time, great. If not, I'll make sure within the timeline, we'll defer to the next one after that. So I'll make a motion. We continue this application consideration to May 27th.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Yeah, that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. I don't think there's anything to discuss under item 9, regulation revisions. We really haven't gotten into that as a subcommittee. Justin, anything you want to bring up?
No, not at this time. Thanks, Rick.
Anything under communication and reports? There was, just as an aside, there was one letter that was submitted to us that I didn't acknowledge for the public hearing. And I asked Mary Kay to simply acknowledge it at our next continuance of the public hearing. So I won't refer to that. We did receive a written letter from the public and didn't acknowledge that during the public hearing. So just want to make sure we follow up on that at our next continuation of the public hearing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, if I might, just a minor staffing update. As of today, I believe, our wetlands officer, Isabel Kisluk, has been relieved. And the Wetlands Commission has appointed and Mark Walter has hired Savannah Kitchen to be the wetlands officer in addition to the zoning officer. And so will be a full-time town hall employee. And then I was also appointed as a wetlands officer as a backup to Savannah.
Okay.
So we'll be enforcing both land use sides. And I'd also note Savannah is not with us because she is this week at zoning training, CASIO, which is the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officers, which is the statutorily mandated training that all zoning officers has to receive. So she's in progress and will hopefully, this time next year be a fully certified zoning officer.
Good news.
In the meantime, John, does that mean you're certified to do the legal aspects of it?
Yeah, and again, as we did with Connie, yeah, so I'm still appointed as essentially backup. But as we did with Connie, if there is any sort of legal question about certification, I can provide that credential. But the way the statute is written, as long as you're essentially on track to get it, and so she is, in process of getting her certification training, that we believe carries all appropriate weight. So, I think we're covered either way, but yeah, just a, belt and suspenders, approach.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you. Item 11, open discussion, anything from the commission? Anything else anyone would like to bring up from the audience that wasn't on the agenda? Thank you for being here tonight. Nothing for executive session. I'll make a motion, we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
That looks unanimous. I'm assuming, Marnie, you voted in favor of.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you very, very much.